If everything you see is only a very small part of something greater, not small in a modest sense, but a fragment almost invisible within a structure our intuition was never designed to comprehend. Pause for a moment. Where are you right now? Perhaps in a familiar room, perhaps beneath the warm glow of a yellow lamp, perhaps in the gentle darkness of night. Everything around you feels stable, solid, real. But what is real in Critique of Pure Reason? Immanuel Kant wrote that we never truly access the thing in itself. We know the world only through the lens of our senses and the architecture of our own mind. In other words, we do not see reality as it is. We see reality as we are able to see it. That is not frightening, only humbling. Imagine a fish that spends its entire life in the ocean. It knows the currents, it knows pressure, it knows the shifting of water, but it does not know air. Not because air does not exist, but because its perceptual structure was not designed to recognize it. And now, gently reverse the question. What if we too are living within some vast ocean we do not have the capacity to perceive? Not to create anxiety, but to expand imagination. Science has shown us again and again that our intuition is often wrong. We once believed the sun revolved around the earth. We once believed matter was solid and continuous. We once believed time flowed evenly like a straight river. Then Albert Einstein appeared and wrote in Relativity the special and the general theory. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion, an illusion that persists. Let that sentence settle for a moment. If time, the thing you feel passing second by second, is merely a relative structure, what else in your life might be only an observable version of something deeper? You do not need to answer. Simply let the question rest there. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "The eternal silence of these infinite spaces terrifies me." But perhaps, if we listen more carefully, that silence is not terrifying. Perhaps it is simply vast. And within that vastness, we are not swallowed. We are held. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Perhaps what matters is not understanding the full architecture of reality, but realizing we do not need to understand it in order to dwell within it. Picture something very gently. You stand beneath a night sky, no city lights, no noise, only stars. The light you see may have left its star hundreds, even thousands of years ago. When that light began its journey, there was no you. No room like this. No thoughts like the ones you are having now. And yet now it touches your retina, becomes a moment, becomes part of the reality you experience. But what if that sky is only a surface, like the skin of a lake reflecting the moon, while beneath it lies a depth the eye cannot reach? In modern physics, we speak of dark matter and dark energy forms that make up most of the universe yet cannot be directly seen. We are living within a structure where the invisible far outweighs the visible. And strangely, that does not make your life any less real. This feeling is still real. This breath is still real. This heartbeat is still real. Perhaps real does not depend on understanding the entire system. Perhaps it rests in experiencing it from within. Carl Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." If the outer reality may be larger than we imagine, so too is the inner one. There are layers of the mind we have never touched, layers of memory, archetypal structures, images rising in dreams. You are not merely your name, not merely your biography, not merely what others see. You are part of a network of atoms that once lived in the core of a star. Carl Sagan wrote in Cosmos, "We are made of star stuff, not as poetry, but as physical fact." If you are formed from the matter of stars, can your everyday intuition possibly grasp the whole of that truth? Perhaps not, and that is entirely all right. You do not need to carry the entire universe inside your mind. You only need to lie here and breathe. There is a peculiar peace that comes when we admit we do not see everything. It releases us from the burden of control, of certainty, of having answers. Tonight we are not trying to explain the full structure of reality. We are placing a single gentle question. What if this world is wider than you think, deeper, layered upon layers? And what if you are not small within it, but simply a part experiencing it from a particular vantage point? Like a small point of light in a vast network. Not the center, not the edge. Simply here. Notice your breathing now, the space between two breaths. That quiet interval. Perhaps reality is like that as well, vast structural layers, and between them, silences we have not yet noticed. You do not need to understand everything. You only need to allow yourself to exist within a universe that may be larger than your intuition, and that rather than unsettling you, may make you lighter. Because if reality is wider than we think, then our small worries are placed within a wider frame, softer, gentler. Tonight, let this question be not a challenge, but an invitation, a door slightly open. You do not need to walk through it now, only know that it is there. And while the universe in ways beyond our intuition continues to expand, you may close your eyes. Not to escape reality, but to rest within it. Wide, quiet, and enough. If in the previous chapter we asked whether reality might be wider than our intuition allows, then tonight we take one step further. Not to assert, not to believe, only to imagine. What if this universe, the entirety of galaxies, stars, even space and time themselves, is simply the interior of a black hole? It sounds paradoxical. In popular imagination, a black hole is an ending, a collapse, a vanishing point where everything disappears. But physics does not always tell simple stories. In Einstein's theory of general relativity, a black hole is not merely a hole. It is a mathematical solution of space-time, curved to an extreme, a region where the structure of reality grows strange. And some physicists have asked a quiet question. What if the inside of a black hole is not emptiness, but the unfolding of a new universe? Notice what you feel when you hear that. Perhaps a flicker of confusion, perhaps wonder, perhaps even a subtle softness. Because if this is true, or even possibly true, then inside and outside lose their sharp edges. We may be living within a larger structure born from what we call collapse. Yet on another level, it is genesis. Observations from the James Webb Space Telescope have revealed surprises. Some early galaxies appear to show distributions and rotational directions that are not entirely random. This is not proof of a black hole universe hypothesis, but it is a reminder that we do not yet understand the deep architecture of space. And in science, not understanding is not failure. It is a doorway. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "The eternal silence of these infinite spaces terrifies me." But perhaps that silence is not a void. Perhaps it is a shell, and we are inside it. Imagine something gently. You are standing in a dark room. You cannot see the walls. You cannot see the ceiling. You see only the open space before you. You might think you are suspended in nothingness, but in truth, you simply have not perceived the structure that surrounds you. Perhaps the universe is like that. If we are inside a black hole belonging to a greater reality, then the idea of boundary changes. A black hole ceases to be an ending. It becomes a one-way threshold. In philosophy, there is a thought that death is not annihilation, but a transition we cannot observe from this side. Here, physics and philosophy meet in quiet resonance. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." If the universe has deeper layers than we can see, perhaps we do as well. The idea that we are inside a greater structure does not diminish us. It enfolds us. Think about that. A black hole in imagination is where light cannot escape. But if from within a universe is born light, still exists. Stars still burn. Life still emerges. We simply do not see the outside. And that does not make this experience less real. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it is endurable, then endure it." If reality has layers we cannot reach, perhaps the only thing we must do is dwell within the layer we are given. There is no need to panic at the thought of living inside a black hole. No need to search for escape. Only an acknowledgement that the structure of the world may be more intricate than our daily imagination suggests. And that is perfectly all right. There is a special peace in allowing ourselves not to know, not to possess the entire map, not to know the absolute beginning, not to know whether an outside exists in the way we think. Albert Einstein once said, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. Not certainty, but mystery." If the universe is the interior of a black hole, then we are living within a story far larger than we once imagined. But tonight, we do not need to solve it. We only need to lie here in a quiet room and know that however deep the structure of reality may go, this breath is still yours. Black holes may exist. Layers of reality may unfold. Galaxies may spin within frameworks we do not yet understand. But right now you are here, and that is enough. Let the hypothesis drift by like a cloud in the night sky. No need to hold it. No need to debate it. Just a possibility gently placed down. Soft, quiet, open. If the universe resembles a black hole, perhaps depth is not something to fear. Perhaps it is something that holds, and you are not a lost speck in darkness. You are part of that structure, breathing, listening, floating lightly within something larger than you imagined. And as that thought dissolves into stillness, allow your mind to drift with it, not falling, only moving deeper into calm. If in the previous chapter we touched upon the possibility that the universe might be the interior of a black hole, then tonight we move a little deeper, not downward in space, but inward in depth. There is an old story sometimes told in conversations about cosmology. A scientist explains that the Earth orbits the Sun resides within a galaxy, and the galaxy is part of the universe. A listener stands and says, "No, the world rests on the back of a giant turtle." The scientist smiles and asks, "And what does that turtle stand on?" "On another turtle, and beneath that one all the way down. An endless chain. No bottom, no final foundation." Modern science does not speak of turtles, yet the idea of layered reality stacked upon one another is no longer entirely foreign. If each black hole could be a doorway, and if beyond that doorway there is another universe, then the structure of existence might resemble ripples spreading endlessly across a lake. Imagine a still body of water at night. A small stone falls. A ring expands. Then another, and another. No ring is the last. They simply continue. If our universe is one ripple, perhaps it was born from a deeper movement. And if so, the question, where did it begin, may not have a simple answer. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz once asked, "Why is there something rather than nothing?" A question that sounds simple, yet perhaps has no bottom. If reality is layered upon itself, then every why may rest upon another why. And rather than unsettling us, this may bring a quiet gentleness. Because if there is no ultimate floor, there is also no point at which we are required to comprehend it all. We are simply within one layer, one ripple, one breath within a greater breathing. Alan Watts once said, "The universe is not a thing, it is an event." If the universe is an event, a movement, a process unfolding, then searching for an unchanging foundation may not be the most fitting perspective. Now shift gently from the image of the universe to yourself. You are not merely this present thought. You have memory, you have depths within your mind. Carl Jung wrote, "The psyche is by no means identical with consciousness. Rather, consciousness is only a small part of the psyche. Consciousness is only a small part. Just as the universe may be one layer among many, your waking awareness is only the surface of a wider interior sea. And that is not frightening. It simply means you are larger than you imagined. If each black hole is a doorway, perhaps each dream is a smaller doorway within the mind. Layers upon layers, not noisy, not demanding to be understood, simply existing. Tonight, we are not trying to determine whether there are infinite universes. We are simply standing by that imagined lakeshore, watching the ripples extend. You do not need to see the entire surface of the water. You only need to see one ring and notice that it continues. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy." If all things are interwoven, then searching for a final endpoint may be a habit of the mind rather than a truth of reality. Notice the feeling when you release the need to find the bottom. No longer tracing back to the first cause, no longer decoding the entire structure, simply resting within one layer, one ring, one moment. If the universe is turtles stacked in darkness, then that darkness is not emptiness. It is the backdrop for further layers. And you are not at the bottom, not at the summit, only at a particular place within an endless sequence. And that is enough. Imagine placing your hand upon the surface of the lake. Ripples spread outward. You do not know where they will reach, but you know they are moving. Perhaps your existence is like that, a small ripple within a larger structure. No need to be the final ripple, no need to be the first, only to be this one. And as the idea of endless layers begins to dissolve, allow it to fade as water grows still, not sinking to a bottom, not falling into a void, simply widening and quieting. In that darkness, there is no panic, only depth, and you are drifting very lightly within a gentle ripple of being. If in the previous chapter we stood at the shore of universes nested within universes, then tonight we lift our gaze toward the sky, not to search for an answer, only to listen. There is a simple question that has followed humanity for decades. The universe contains hundreds of billions of galaxies. Each galaxy holds hundreds of billions of stars. Many of those stars have planets. So, where is everyone? This question is known as the Fermi paradox. It is not a complicated theory. It is simply a quiet astonishment. If life could arise here, why does the sky remain silent? But let us pause at the word silent. Silence is not proof of emptiness. Imagine two people standing at opposite ends of a vast field. They may exist, they may breathe, they may call each other's names, but if the distance is too great, sound will not reach. The universe is not a small room. It is an ocean of distance. Carl Sagan wrote in Cosmos, "The universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, seems like an awful waste of space. But perhaps instead of waste, we might think in terms of distance. Distance is not the denial of life. It is simply the expansion of space. And there is another possibility, a gentler one. What if civilizations advanced enough do not vanish, but simply move beyond what we can comprehend? Perhaps they no longer send signals through radio waves. Perhaps they no longer exist within the same layer of reality we inhabit. Like a child searching for signs of adults in a playroom, while the adults have stepped into another room entirely. That does not mean the child has been abandoned. It simply means two levels of awareness no longer overlap. Blaise Pascal wrote, "The eternal silence of these infinite spaces terrifies me. But perhaps that silence is not rejection. Perhaps it is patience. Imagine a vast library at night, millions of books, yet all of them closed, not because they are empty, but because we have not yet opened the right page." Alan Watts once said, "We are the universe experiencing itself." If that is so, then perhaps elsewhere the universe is also experiencing itself through forms we do not recognize. The silence of civilizations may not be a void. It may be another form of motion. Think of light. Light from a star millions of light years away is still traveling. It does not hurry. It does not stop. Just because we have not yet seen it does not mean it does not exist. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy." If all things are interwoven, then silence too is part of that web. Perhaps civilizations advanced enough have chosen depth over breadth, no longer expanding through space, but through consciousness. No longer building vast physical structures, but dissolving into subtler layers of being. This is not an assertion, only a possibility. And within that possibility, loneliness softens. Because if silence is merely distance, then distance may be bridged by time, or by growth. Perhaps we are still at the early chapter of the story, a beginning page while later chapters are yet to be written. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." What if the music of the universe is playing at a frequency we have not yet learned to hear? That does not diminish us. It simply means we are still learning to listen. Tonight, we do not need to solve the Fermi paradox. We do not need to determine whether anyone is out there. We only need to shift our view slightly. Silence is not proof of nothingness. It may be the expression of distance, and distance may be filled with light still on its way. Notice the night sky within your mind right now. Not a cold emptiness, but an open vastness. Between the stars lies distance. Yet, it is that very distance that allows them to shine. Perhaps in your own life it is the same. There are quiet intervals, moments without signal, times that seem empty, but they are not void. They are space for something to mature. And as that thought begins to settle, let the silence of the universe no longer be a fear. Let it become a wide sky. You are not abandoned within it. You are simply at one point in a greater web. And whether there is anyone else out there or not tonight, you are not alone. You are here, breathing, listening. In the silence, it is not emptiness. It is only the distance between the stars. If in the previous chapter we lifted our eyes to the sky and listened to the silence between the stars, then tonight we move downward. Not into the soil beneath your feet, but beneath the ice. Imagine a small moon orbiting a giant planet. Its surface is ice, white, cold, still. This is Europa, a moon of Jupiter, and Enceladus, circling Saturn. From afar they appear like frozen spheres suspended in cosmic darkness. But beneath that thick crust of ice, there may be an ocean. Liquid water, moving, warmed by heat rising from within. An ocean that has never seen sunlight. No dawn, no dusk, no sky. And scientists wonder, could life exist there? Not radiant creatures under beams of light, but forms adapted to eternal darkness. If you sit with that thought, it feels unexpectedly gentle, because it expands our definition of life. We often imagine life requires light, requires a sky, requires photosynthesis, requires a sun. Yet here on Earth, at the deepest ocean floors where light has never reached, ecosystems thrive. Organisms live from the heat of hydrothermal vents, from chemical reactions. Without sunlight, there may be worlds alive that have never known what a sky is. And here a soft question is placed before you. What if life exists yet has never known the sky? There may be a trace of sadness in that question. But look again. Perhaps those beings lack nothing. They do not yearn for light because they have never known it. They exist fully within their environment. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Perhaps light is not the only condition for growth. There are forms of life that develop in darkness. There are forms of awareness that mature in unseen depths. And there are people too who are shaped this way. Not everyone grows beneath a radiant sky. Not everyone is raised in easy light. Some grow within deep inner oceans, in places never illuminated. And this does not make them incomplete. Rainer Maria Rilke wrote in Letters to a Young Poet, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves." Perhaps life in darkness also loves its own unanswered questions, without needing resolution, without needing a sky, simply existing. When we imagine these hidden oceans, we begin to see that the universe is not only wide in breadth, but deep in layers. Not only distant galaxies, but sheets of ice concealing something breathing beneath. There are processes unfolding beyond our sight, and their invisibility does not make them unreal. Alan Watts once said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." Perhaps life in darkness has plunged into its own conditions, has entered fully into its environment and joined its quiet rhythm. No sunlight, but motion. No sky, but ocean. And when we contemplate this, something softens within us. We stop assuming our experience is the measure of all things. We stop believing what we see is the whole of reality. There may be forms of existence we cannot imagine, and that does not make the world fragile. It makes it abundant. Think of yourself now. There are parts of you that no one has ever seen, subterranean oceans of feeling, deep thoughts without words. They still exist. They still move, even without light upon them. And perhaps not everything requires illumination to have value. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." Yet not every abyss is frightening. Some abysses are filled with water, filled with life. They simply do not receive the sun. As you lie down tonight, imagine an ocean beneath thick ice, silent, deep, yet not dead. Perhaps life drifts there unaware of any sky, unneeding of one. And so do you. You do not need to see the entire universe to exist fully within this moment. There are parts of you alive even when you do not name them, and that is enough. Tonight, let this idea settle like snow upon ice. No noise, no judgment. Just a gentle recognition life takes more shapes than we once believed. And not every ocean requires light. If in the previous chapter we descended into oceans that have never seen the light, then tonight we remain there a little longer. Not to search for strange creatures, but to listen for something even more subtle. Oxygen. We usually imagine oxygen as belonging to the sky, to green leaves, to sunlight. Leaves open, Light touches them. A chemical reaction unfolds, and we breathe. It seems simple, clear, almost comforting in its order. But science, like a quiet storyteller, sometimes tilts its head and whispers, perhaps not entirely so. Recently, researchers discovered that in the deep darkness of the ocean, where sunlight has never reached, oxygen can still be produced. Not from the sun, but from natural electrochemical reactions from rocks and metals resting on the seabed. Oxygen in darkness. A small idea, perhaps. Yet it opens a gentle fracture in how we understand the world. Because if oxygen, the very thing we associate with light, can be born in darkness, then perhaps the universe is broader than our definitions. We often believe we understand how things work. That light is the source of life. That darkness is absence. But perhaps darkness is not absence. Perhaps it is simply another environment. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. There are processes happening beyond our sight, and they continue patiently. Beneath the ocean's black waters, oxygen may be forming molecule by molecule, without spectacle, without announcement. We do not see it. Yet it unfolds. And if you allow yourself to feel it, this is not only science, it is a quiet reminder. There are things within you happening beyond your awareness. Small changes, slow healing, inner structures rearranging themselves. You may not perceive them, but that does not make them unreal. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. There is a silent order within what we call confusion." Just as oxygen can emerge from the dark seabed, perhaps there is a hidden order forming in parts of you, not yet fully understood. We often wait for light to believe. We wait for success to believe we are progressing. We wait for praise to believe we have worth. We wait for clarity to believe we are moving in the right direction. But what if the most essential processes occur in darkness? Rainer Maria Rilke wrote in Letters to a Young Poet. Perhaps everything that frightens us is in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love. Perhaps darkness is not an enemy. Perhaps it is simply a space not yet understood. In the deep ocean there is no sun, no blue sky, no dawn. Yet there are intricate chemical reactions. There is molecular motion. There is oxygen being born. The universe may be wider than our definitions, and so may you. You are not only what others see. You are not only your brightest moments. You are also your depths. The unnamed places. The quiet transformations. Alan Watts once said, "The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless." Life is bound to movement even when we cannot see that movement. When we speak of dark oxygen, we are speaking of possibility, of life that does not require light, of a process that does not need observation to exist. This is also true of consciousness. You do not need to understand the entire structure of your mind for it to continue functioning. Parts of you are working, processing memory, reorganizing emotion, softening tension, even when you are unaware. Like the ocean floor, like oxygen in the dark. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "What if pleasure and displeasure were so tied together that whoever wanted to have as much as possible of one must also have as much as possible of the other?" Perhaps light and darkness are not opposites, but two aspects of one unfolding process. If oxygen can arise in darkness, then perhaps darkness is not deprivation. It is simply part of the cycle. Tonight, as you lie down, remember that not everything needs to be illuminated immediately. There are processes unfolding beyond your sight, and that is not frightening. It is gentle, like oxygen molecules forming beneath kilometers of silent water. Slow, patient, unseen. You do not need to witness your entire journey to trust that it continues. The universe is wider than our definitions, and perhaps your mind is as well. Let that idea settle softly. No need to grasp it fully. Only know that even in darkness, something is breathing. If in the previous chapter we spoke of oxygen born in darkness, then tonight we speak of another kind of air. Not something we breathe, but something through which we think. Imagine particles so small you cannot see them with the naked eye. Tiny grains that can measure light, register signals, transmit data. Smart dust. Now imagine neural interfaces, devices capable of connecting directly to the brain. Recording signals, sending signals, expanding memory, perhaps one day even sharing thoughts. Technology as an invisible web gradually stretching outward. And here the question is not whether such things will happen. The question is, if intelligence can be extended, where does the self remain? There is no need to answer immediately. Just let the question rest like a small stone dropped into still water. Philosophy has long doubted the solidity of the ego. David Hume wrote in A Treatise of Human Nature, "I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception." He could not find a fixed self. Only streams of sensation, one experience following another. If that is so, perhaps the self is not a solid object. Perhaps it is a process. Carl Jung spoke of something larger than the conscious ego, a self broader than the identity we usually claim. In The Undiscovered Self, he wrote, "The bigger the crowd, the more negligible the individual becomes." Yet he also emphasized individuation, the quiet journey of becoming oneself amidst collective forces. When technology begins linking minds into networks, the question is not only technical, it is existential. Do we dissolve into the web, or do we simply widen our horizon? Perhaps this is not entirely new. From the moment you learned to read your mind, began connecting with other minds. When you read Marcus Aurelius, you share a space of awareness with a Roman emperor who lived nearly 2,000 years ago. When you listen to music, you enter the emotional landscape of its composer. Your sense of self has always been shaped in relation. Martin Buber wrote in I and Thou All Real Living is Meeting. Perhaps the self is not an island, but a point of encounter. Technology may only make this encounter more immediate. If one day memory can be stored outside the brain, if knowledge flows like a shared current, what remains of me? The answer may not lie in physical boundaries. It may lie in experience. No matter where information originates, the experience unfolds within you. Alan Watts once said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself." However vast intelligence becomes, you remain that aperture, a point of view. The network may not erase you. It may simply expand your field of sight. Still, a very human concern lingers. If everything connects, do we lose the privacy of the soul? There is no need to rush this thought, for perhaps the essence is not in the machinery, but in awareness. Even now, as you listen to this voice, my thoughts and your thoughts intersect. You are connected, and yet you remain yourself. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "Become who you are." Perhaps becoming who you are does not mean isolating yourself from influence. Perhaps it means discovering your own form within the flow. If intelligence can expand, what matters may not be the physical edge of the brain, but the capacity for self-awareness, for presence. You may connect with the entire world, but the moment you recognize that connection, the recognition itself remains yours. In the darkness of the cosmos, we spoke of oxygen forming beyond sight. In the subtle shadows of technology, networks may be forming beyond comprehension. Yet this need not be frightening. Humans have always been creatures of connection. language, culture, collective memory. These have long been primitive neural interfaces. Perhaps what changes is not the nature of the self, but the scale of connection. And tonight, as you lie down, let the question rest gently. If intelligence can be extended, where does the self reside? Perhaps not within physical borders. Perhaps within the capacity to feel, to love, to be aware, to be present. No matter how vast the network becomes, this experience, the rhythm of your breathing, the sensation of your body resting, the quiet, settling of thought still unfolds within you. And that is enough for you to remain you. There is no need for anxiety, no need for final conclusions, only a soft reflection in the night. Perhaps the self is not a wall, but a wave. And even if it touches invisible networks, it carries its own rhythm. Let the question drift more slowly now, like intelligent dust suspended in air, like a thought not yet seeking resolution. And within all this connection, you are still breathing. If in the previous chapter we spoke of invisible networks connecting minds, then tonight we move a little further. So far that the question is no longer what is the mind connected to, but rather what is this reality itself? Imagine an idea as light as mist, that this universe, the stars, the atoms, even the body you are resting in right now might be part of a simulation, like a program, a system running on lines of code, the laws of physics as equations, the constants of nature as variables set in place, not to disturb you, only as a possibility. Nick Bostrom once suggested that if advanced civilizations can run detailed simulations of universes, then the probability that we are living inside one is not zero. But tonight, we do not need to calculate probability. We only need to listen to the question. If everything is a program, then what is real? René Descartes doubted everything. He doubted the senses, the external world, even the existence of his own body. Yet he found one point he could not deny. In Meditations on First Philosophy, he wrote, "I think, therefore I am." Even if the world were illusion, even if a deceiving force manipulated every perception, the experience of thinking was occurring, and that was enough to affirm a kind of existence. If reality is a simulation, you are still experiencing it. The sensation of the blanket against your skin, the sound of this voice, the slowing rhythm of your breath. These do not disappear simply because we question their foundation. Alan Watts once said, "The menu is not the meal." Perhaps the concept of simulation is merely a description, a map, but experience remains the meal. Whether made of code or matter, you are still feeling, and that feeling is real. Sometimes we fear the simulation idea because it makes the world seem fragile, as though everything could be switched off at any moment. But consider another perspective. If this is a simulation, it is an extraordinarily intricate one, detailed enough to create love, detailed enough to create sorrow, detailed enough to create memory. William James wrote in The Principles of Psychology, "My experience is what I agree to attend to." Your reality is shaped by your attention. Whatever its substrate binary digits or fundamental particles experience still passes through your awareness. You remain the place where the world is felt. Perhaps the laws of physics are lines of code. Perhaps not. Perhaps the constants of the cosmos were set. Or perhaps they simply are. But one thing remains unchanged: this moment is unfolding. Martin Heidegger spoke of being in the world the way humans are always already within the world before analyzing it. You do not experience reality as theory. You experience it as breath. If the universe is a program, you are not meaningless code. You are a point of view, a place where consciousness occurs. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Whatever the foundation of the cosmos may be, the journey of becoming still holds meaning. Meaning does not rest in the physical substrate. It rests in subjective experience. Perhaps the simulation hypothesis is simply a modern metaphor for an ancient question. What is reality? Plato once told the story of the cave people mistaking shadows on the wall for reality. The simulation idea may be a digital version of that allegory, but whether you are seeing shadows or code, you are still seeing, and the act of seeing is real. Tonight, you do not need to solve this question. You do not need to know whether the universe runs on some cosmic computer. You only need to recognize that your experience is still happening. Breath in, breath out, thoughts arriving and dissolving. Whether code or matter, your experience is real. And perhaps what matters most is not the substrate of reality, but how you live within it. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Whatever the world is, you still have the capacity to choose your attitude. And in this moment, you can choose stillness. Let the question, what if reality is a simulation, drift like a cloud across the night sky of your mind? No need to grasp it, no need to refute it, just a soft contemplation in the dark. Because whether the universe is code or matter, you are here, breathing, experiencing, and that is real enough for tonight. Chapter 9. A Brain Born in the Void. If, in the previous chapter, we questioned whether reality itself might be a simulation, then tonight we move into an idea even quieter. Not a programmed universe, but a brain. Imagine a cosmos so vast it cannot be measured and lasting so long, trillions upon trillions of years, that time itself becomes almost indistinguishable from infinity. In such an expanse, particles drift randomly. Given enough time, improbable configurations may occur, a fluctuation, a rare arrangement, and from that a complex structure forms. A brain with memories, with a sense of past, with a consciousness asking softly, "Who am I?" This is the idea of the Boltzmann brain, a consciousness that could arise spontaneously from chaos. It may sound unsettling, but let us not rush. This is not a declaration about reality, only a thought experiment, a logical whisper. If such a brain appeared complete with memories of childhood, of a world of loved ones, yet all of it merely the illusion of random fluctuation, what would make those memories real? The question touches quietly upon the foundation of experience. John Locke wrote in an essay concerning human understanding that personal identity is bound to memory. If you remember doing something, then you are the one who did it. But if memory can arise by chance, if it has no genuine past, does identity dissolve? David Hume, as we have seen, could not locate a fixed self, only a succession of perceptions. And here, the Boltzmann brain idea seems to push that insight to its edge. If consciousness can emerge from disorder, what anchors our experience in continuity? Pause for a moment. You are hearing this voice. You feel your body resting. There is something more than a solitary thought flickering in emptiness. There is co-presence. Martin Buber wrote in I and Thou, all real living is meeting. Perhaps what makes memory real is not only the physical structure of a brain. Perhaps it is that memory is shared. When you recount a moment and another remembers it with you, that memory becomes anchored. It is no longer a lone fluctuation. It becomes part of a relation. Edmund Husserl spoke of intersubjectivity, the way reality is confirmed through the presence of others. A solitary brain in the void might lack that. It could contain memories, but no reflection, no we. Carl Jung wrote, The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Your memories do not exist only within you. They are shaped and reshaped in encounter. They become part of a shared narrative. So perhaps what makes memory real is not the perfection of its origin, but the fact that it is lived together. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in "Thus Spoke Zarathustra." The loneliest one is the one who has not yet found himself. Perhaps the deepest unease within the Boltzmann brain idea is not false memory, but absolute solitude. A consciousness without a world. But you are not such a being. You live within a network. Family, friends, strangers beneath the same sky. Even now, as you listen to this quiet voice in the night, you are not entirely alone. Someone speaks. Someone listens. There is an intersection, and within that intersection, reality is woven. Perhaps the universe could produce a random brain. Perhaps strange fluctuations are possible. But what makes your life different is continuity. Waking each morning, recognizing the same room, the same faces. Repetition is not monotony. It is the foundation of the real. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything that happens is as usual and familiar as the rose in spring and the fruit in summer." That familiarity is a gentle sign of continuity. You are not a solitary fluctuation in the void. You are part of a stream. And as the idea of the Boltzmann brain fades, like a distant mathematical abstraction, let one quiet question remain: what makes memory real? Perhaps not equations guaranteeing it, but living it together. When you remember, someone else remembers. When you hurt, someone may touch your hand. When you exist, you do not exist alone. Tonight, let that soften any overly logical unease. You are not a lonely brain suspended in emptiness. You are part of a living web. And it is that sense of we that makes this experience, this breath, this shared listening real. If in the previous chapter we asked what makes memory real, then tonight we move one layer deeper. Not only memory, but the very laws that seem to hold this universe upright. We tend to believe that physics is the foundation. That constants, like the speed of light, like the charge of the electron, are unchanging. We call them constants as if they were carved into the bedrock of reality. Yet modern physics whispers another possibility, that the vacuum state of the universe may not be the lowest possible state. That we might be living in what is called a false vacuum. And if one day a tiny quantum fluctuation were to occur, a small bubble of a more stable state could form. It would expand at the speed of light, and as it passed through the constants of physics might change. Atoms as we know them would no longer behave the same. The structure of matter itself would be altered. It is a quiet idea, but a profound one, not meant to plant fear. The probability may be extraordinarily small. Perhaps it will never happen. Yet the mere possibility that the laws could change opens a soft reflection. What is truly permanent, Heraclitus once said, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. Even when we believe the river is fixed, it is flowing. Perhaps physics is like that. Perhaps what we call law is simply a long-lasting stability within a greater unfolding. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "All is flux, and thou art but a thought." Everything moves. If the constants of physics could change, then the stability we feel is not absolute. But instead of anxiety, let us feel this differently. If nothing is eternal, then this moment becomes more precious. If the universe could change at any time, however unlikely, then the fact that you are lying here breathing, listening is quietly miraculous. Not because it will vanish immediately, but because it is not guaranteed forever. Martin Heidegger spoke of being toward death that awareness of finitude deepens existence. Perhaps vacuum decay is the cosmic echo of that insight, not a warning of imminent ending, but a reminder that nothing is fixed beyond all possibility. And within that uncertainty, there is a strange beauty. William James wrote, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes. You cannot control the quantum structure of the vacuum, but you can choose your posture toward this moment. You can choose gentleness. Perhaps one day physics will be different. But tonight, the constants remain steady. Atoms still bind. Your heart still beats. And it is this temporary steadiness that makes everything fragile yet complete." Alan Watts once said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." If reality is a dance, then the constants are only the current rhythm. The rhythm may change, but the dance is happening now, and you are within it. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in The Gay Science, "To live is to suffer to survive, is to find some meaning in the suffering." Perhaps we might gently expand that thought. To live is to dwell in impermanence. Living means resting within what is not guaranteed. And instead of searching for absolute foundation, we may find meaning in the very fragility of things. If a quantum bubble could someday transform the universe, then each stable moment is a gift. No drama required. Only a soft recognition reality is not promised infinitely. And so this moment deserves attention. Feel the bed beneath your back, the quiet movement of breath in and out. The constants of physics are still holding everything together. Electrons still circle, atoms remain coherent, and within this delicate structure you exist, not as an eternal certainty, but as a luminous point within a flowing universe. And perhaps it is precisely because physics could change, even as a distant possibility, that this moment feels gentler. You do not need to grasp it. You do not need to control it. Only to be here. Because whatever the future of the constants may be tonight is unfolding. And that is enough. If in the previous chapter we spoke of the possibility that the constants of physics might one day change, then tonight let us keep those constants as they are, and instead expand space. Imagine a universe without an edge. No final wall, no boundary where everything stops. Only space continuing and continuing. If space is infinite, and if the number of ways atoms can arrange themselves within a finite region is itself finite, then, by probability, configurations must eventually repeat. Somewhere so distant that light could not reach us for trillions upon trillions of years, there may be a planet like Earth, a room like this one, a person like you, the same atomic structure, the same memories, the same thoughts slowly settling in the night. At first, this idea can make us feel small, but pause. This is not a story about you being unimportant. Quite the opposite. If you are a rare configuration of atoms, then the very fact that such a configuration has occurred even once is extraordinary. Carl Sagan wrote in Cosmos, "We are made of star stuff. The atoms in your body were once part of exploding stars. They traveled through space, combined, reassembled, and one day they arranged themselves into you. Even if somewhere unimaginably far there exists a distant duplicate that does not diminish this moment, because this moment happens here." Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." Even if another version of you exists somewhere, you never step into the same river twice. Each moment is different. The universe may be infinite, but the present is always finite. And it is that finitude that gives rise to meaning. Friedrich Nietzsche, in The Gay Science, wrote of eternal recurrence, the thought that everything might repeat endlessly. He did not present it as punishment, but as a challenge. If you had to live this very moment again and again for eternity, would you embrace it? Perhaps that question matters more than whether duplicates exist. If somewhere far away there is another you, that version is experiencing its own present. But you only have this one. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Confine yourself to the present, not because the future is unreal, but because the present is the only place we can live." Infinite space may allow patterns to repeat, but probability speaks only of arrangement, not of experience. This experience, the feeling of your body at rest, the slow drifting of thought, occurs only at this coordinate. Martin Buber wrote, "All real living is meeting." Even if infinite versions of you exist across boundless space, only you here meet the world in this way. Perhaps the gentlest part of this idea is not repetition, but occurrence. You are a rare configuration of atoms. In a vast universe, that configuration has happened. Even if it repeats beyond sight, it does not lessen the wonder of it happening here. William James once wrote, "The great use of life is to spend it for something that will outlast it." If you are a temporary arrangement of matter, then how you live becomes the ripple that extends beyond you. Not because you are the only one in all existence, but because you are the only one in this relation, in this room, in this moment. Alan Watts said you are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. Perhaps somewhere unimaginably distant, the universe looks through an aperture identical to you, but that does not lessen the fact that it is looking through you now, and you are feeling. Tonight, let the idea of distant duplicates not distract you. Let it instead be a gentle reminder the universe is vast enough to allow rare things to occur, and you are one of the things that has occurred. There is no need to compare yourself to an imagined twin in distant galaxies. No need to be overwhelmed by infinity. Simply recognize within this immense structure you are present. A configuration of atoms breathing. A consciousness listening. The universe may be infinite, but this moment is singular, and that is enough for you to cherish it before you drift into sleep. If, in the previous chapter, we spoke of an infinite universe and distant versions of you, then tonight we travel to the farthest edge of time, not the edge of space, but the edge of heat. Entropy, a word that sounds technical, almost abstract, yet it is simple. Entropy is the tendency of every system to move toward equilibrium. Heat spreads, energy disperses. A cup of hot tea left alone cools. A bright room grows dark once the light is turned off. Not because something has gone wrong, only because this is how nature moves. If we extend this principle to the entire universe, physicists imagine a distant future. Stars slowly exhaust their fuel. Light grows sparse. Temperatures fall. Eventually, the universe reaches a state of maximum equilibrium. No more energy differences to drive complex motion. A long silence. This is called heat death. But let us slow down. This is not a tragic tale. There is no dramatic music here, no lament, only a cycle. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul." If the universe is like a living being, then heat death may resemble a long sleep, not catastrophe, only a phase. Heraclitus said everything flows. Temperature flows, light flows, and eventually they disperse. What unsettles us may not be the scenario itself, but our attachment to permanence. We wish for stars to shine forever, for the sky to remain unchanged. Yet impermanence is not a flaw in the cosmos. It is its rhythm. In Buddhism, impermanence is recognized as a fundamental truth. All things arise and pass away, not to sadden us, but to awaken us. William James wrote, "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. If we see heat death as a threat, we see darkness. But if we see it as a natural stage in a vast unfolding, we may feel calm." Alan Watts said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." Perhaps the universe is performing a very slow dance, from the fiery burst of the Big Bang through billions of years of star and planet formation toward a gradual cooling. No movement is mistaken, no movement unnecessary. Only phases within one great melody. When you think of heat death, imagine a room after a gathering. The lights have dimmed, the music has stopped, not because the gathering was meaningless, but because it has completed itself. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "All things go, all things return, eternally rolls the wheel of being." Perhaps heat death is not an absolute ending. Perhaps it is a transition within a cycle we do not yet understand. But even if it were the final quiet, it would not strip the present of value. On the contrary, it is precisely because stars do not burn forever that their light is precious. Because warmth does not last infinitely, it feels gentle when it touches us. Martin Heidegger spoke of how awareness of finitude deepens existence. If the universe itself is finite in heat, then the warmth of now is a gift. Feel your body in this moment, the temperature just right, the slow rhythm of your heart, the steady breath. Entropy is at work in every cell, yet it does not frighten you. It is the foundation of movement. Everything moves in cycles. Day becomes night. Seasons turn. Heat becomes cool. And perhaps from that final stillness, another cycle may one day begin. But tonight, we do not need to travel so far. It is enough to recognize that even heat death, the most distant idea in cosmology, can be viewed with serenity. No sorrow, no drama. Only a soft acknowledgement all things move in cycles. And within that vast cycle, this moment radiates a small warmth. Let that thought soften, like a quiet star dimming gently before you drift into sleep. And now, after we have traveled through the widest possibilities of the universe, through ideas that gently unsettled the very foundation of reality, the voice may slow, not to conclude, not to prove anything, only to set things down. You do not need to understand the entire structure of reality. The universe is still expanding whether you think about it or not. Galaxies continue their slow orbits. Atoms continue to bind. Entropy continues to rise patiently. Everything goes on. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." You do not need to control the universe in order to be at peace within it. You do not need to solve the Fermi paradox. You do not need to determine whether reality is code or matter. You do not need to know whether the constants of physics are eternal. Tonight, you only need to be here. Alan Watts once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." Perhaps trying to define the entirety of reality is much the same. We can reflect, we can question, but at a certain point, gentleness lies in letting go. In Letters to a Young Poet, Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Live the questions now." not solve them. Simply live with them. But living with a question does not mean carrying it into sleep. You may set it down, like placing a book upon a table, like closing a door very softly. The universe does not require you to understand it in order to exist within it. It does not demand that you grasp every structure of space and time. It simply continues, and you are part of that continuation. Not at the center, not at the edge, just here. William James wrote, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes." Perhaps the gentlest attitude right now is to allow yourself to rest from the need to understand. Let the galaxies keep turning. Let the constants of physics remain steady or change according to their own unfolding. Tonight, you do not need to keep pace. Only breathe. Inhale. Exhale. Feel your body supported. Feel your heartbeat soften. All the questions may remain behind quiet, obedient still. The universe continues to expand. But tonight, the only space you need to notice is the small silence between two breaths. And in that silence, there is no paradox, no simulation, no entropy, only presence. Inhale, exhale, and very gently you may drift into sleep without needing to understand anything at all.